Joshua chapter 16. The allotments for the descendants of Joseph went from the Jordan at Jericho to the waters of Jericho on the east, through the wilderness ascending from Jericho into the hill country of Bethel. From Bethel it went to Luz and proceeded to the border of Archades by Ataroth. It then descended westward to the border of the Japhletites, as far as the border of lower Beth-horon, then to Gezer, and ended at the Mediterranean Sea. So Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, received their inheritance. The territory of the Ephraimites by their families was as follows. The boundary of their inheritance on the east was Ataroth Adar, as far as upper Beth-horon, and the boundary goes from there to the sea. On the north is Mikmethath. Then on the east the boundary makes a turn toward Tanath Shiloh and passes along beyond it on the east to Janoah. Then it goes down from Janoah to Ataroth and to Naarah and touches Jericho, ending at the Jordan. From Tappuah the boundary goes westward to the Wadi Kana and ends at the sea. Such is the inheritance of the tribe of the Ephraimites by their families. It also included all the towns and their villages that were set aside for the Ephraimites within the inheritance of the Manassites. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. Joshua chapter 17. This was the allotment for the tribe of Manasseh as Joseph's firstborn. Gilead and Bashan were given to Machir, the firstborn of Manasseh and the leader of Gilead, because he was a man of war. So the allotment was for the rest of Manasseh's descendants by their clans, for the sons of Abiezer, Helek, Azriel, Shichem, Heper, and Shemida. These are the male descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, by their clans. Now Zelophehad, son of Hefer, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, had no sons, only daughters. These are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They came before the priest Eleazar, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders, saying, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our male relatives." So they gave them an inheritance among their father's brothers, in keeping with the Lord's instruction. As a result, 10 tracts fell to Manasseh, besides the land of Gilead and Bashan, which are beyond the Jordan, because Manasseh's daughters received an inheritance among his sons. The land of Gilead belonged to the rest of Manasseh's sons. The border of Manasseh went from Asher to Mikmethath near Shechem. It then went southward toward the inhabitants of En-Tappuah. The land of Tappuah belonged to Manasseh, but the town of Tappuah on the boundary of Manasseh belonged to the Ephraimites. Then the boundary went down the Wadi Kana. The towns there to the south of the Wadi, among the towns of Manasseh, belonged to Ephraim. Then the boundary of Manasseh goes along the north side of the Wadi and ends at the sea. The land to the south is Ephraim's, and that to the north is Manasseh's, with the sea forming its boundary. On the north, Asher is reached, and on the east, Issachar. Within Issachar and Asher, Manasseh and Beth-shean and its villages, Iblim and its villages, the inhabitants of Dor and its villages, the inhabitants of Endor and its villages, the inhabitants of Tanakh and its villages, and the inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages. The third is Naphath. Yet the Manassites could not take possession of those towns, but the Canaanites continued to live in that land. But when the Israelites grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not utterly drive them out. The tribe of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, "Why have you given me but one lot and one portion as an inheritance, since we are a numerous people, whom all along the Lord has blessed?" "If you are so numerous," Joshua answered, "and if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourselves, there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaites." The people of Joseph replied, "The hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots fitted with iron, both those in Beth-shan and its settlements and those in the valley of Jezreel." But Joshua said to the tribes of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, You are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forested hill country as well. Clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out. Joshua chapter 18. The entire Israelite community assembled at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The land had been subdued before them, but 7 tribes among the Israelites were left who had not divided up their inheritance. So Joshua asked the Israelites, "How long will you delay going out to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, gave you? Appoint for yourselves 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them out. They are to go and survey the land, write a description of it for the purpose of their inheritance, and return to me. Then they are to divide it into 7 portions. Judah is to remain in its territory in the south, and Joseph's family in their territory in the north. When you have written a description of the 7 portions of land and brought it to me, I will cast lots for you here in the presence of the Lord our God. But the Levites among you do not get a portion, because their inheritance is the priesthood of the Lord. Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh have taken their inheritance beyond the Jordan to the east, which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave them." As the men prepared to go, Joshua commanded them to write down a description of the land, saying, "Go and survey the land, write a description of it, and return to me. I will then cast lots for you here in Shiloh, in the presence of the Lord." So the men left, went through the land, and described it by towns in a document of 7 sections. They returned to Joshua at the camp at Shiloh. Joshua cast lots for them at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord, where he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their divisions. The lot came up for the tribe of Benjamin's descendants by their clans, and their allotted territory lay between Judah's descendants and Joseph's descendants. On the north side, their territory began at the Jordan, then the boundary goes up to the slope of Jericho on the north, then up through the hill country westward, and it ends at the wilderness of Beth-aven. From there, the boundary passes along southward in the direction of Luz, to the slope of Luz, that is, Bethel. Then the boundary goes down to Ataroth Adar, on the mountain that lies south of lower Beth-horon. Then the boundary goes in another direction, turning on the western side southward from the mountain that lies to the south, opposite Beth-horon, and it ends at Kiriath Baal, that is, Kiriath Jearim, a town belonging to the tribe of Judah. This forms the western side. The southern side begins at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary comes out at the spring of the waters of Nephtoah. Then the boundary goes down to the border of the mountain that overlooks the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is at the north end of the valley of Rephaim, and it goes down the valley of Hinnom, south of the slope of the Jebusites, and downward toward En-Rogel. Then it bends in a northerly direction, going on to En-Shemesh, and from there goes to Geliloth, which is opposite the ascent of Adumim. Then it goes down to the stone of Bohan, Reuben's son, and passing on to the north of the slope of Beth-Araba, it goes down to the Araba. Then the boundary passes on to the north of the slope of Beth-Hoglah, and the boundary ends at the northern bay of the Dead Sea, at the south end of the Jordan. This is the southern border. The Jordan forms its boundary on the eastern side. This is the inheritance of the tribe of Benjamin, according to its families, boundary by boundary, all around. Now the towns of the tribe of Benjamin, according to their families, were Jericho, Beth-Hoglah, Emek-Keziz, Beth-Araba, Zemarim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Ophrah, Kephar Ammoni, Ophni, and Geba, 12 towns and their villages: Gibeon, Ramah, Beeroth, Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rechem, Erpiel, Tarlah, Zelah, Haelath, the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kiriath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. Luke chapter 5. As the crowd was pressing in on Jesus to hear God's word, he was standing by Lake Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats at the edge of the lake. the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, which belonged to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from the land. Then he sat down and was teaching the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch." "Master," Simon replied, "we've worked hard all night long and caught nothing. But if you say so, I'll let down the nets." When they did this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets began to tear. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knee and said, "Go away from me, because I'm a sinful man, Lord." For he and all those with him were amazed at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, Zebedee's sons, who were Simon's partners. "Don't be afraid," Jesus told Simon. "From now on, you will be catching people." Then they brought the boats to land, left everything, and followed him. While he was in one of the towns, a man was there who had leprosy all over him. He saw Jesus, fell face down, and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Reaching out his hand, Jesus touched him, saying, "I am willing, be made clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then he ordered him to tell no one, but go and show yourself to the priest and offer what Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. But the news about him spread even more, and large crowds would come together to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. Yet he often withdrew to deserted places and prayed.